Welcome back, peonies. Today's video is all about the most disturbing animated stories. These stories look completely innocent at first, but trust me, they're hiding something very dark underneath. So get ready, because this video is going to get extremely creepy fast. I honestly don't even want to watch these alone, so grab your snacks, get comfortable, and let's get into the darkness together. Let's start light with the story called The Ghost of the Bald Woman.
The Ghost of the Bald Woman. One day, when I got pretty late returning from work, I had to get a jeepney. When it finally picked me up from the stop, I went and sat beside two girls. As we passed by a mental hospital, a lady with her hospital gown stood there, with her hand pointing that she wanted a ride. She was bald, and her face was pale white. Just as she was about to get into the vehicle, the driver slammed on the gas and rode away. We were confused, but when we looked over at the driver, he was shell-shocked and scared. I asked him why we had left the lady behind. He replied that the person we saw was not a lady. What I saw next has scarred me forever. The lady was on all fours, crawling inhumanely fast as she chased us. Her face was demented, and her eyes pitch black. Just as we lost sight of her, she made a reappearance. Her dress was dirty with mud and blood. We were shivering with fear. And then she jumped on the jeepney. She hung by her fingers to the speeding jeepney and lifted her face. She revealed the insanely sharp teeth in her mouth. She was scaring everyone on the ride, and that is when I hit her with my bag, causing her to fly off. I saw her standing bruised on the road, like a demon. We rushed off the ride as soon as we could. I went to a 7-Eleven nearby to grab a snack. The salesman saw my worried face and asked if everything was okay. I told him what had happened, and he said it was the ghost of an old cancer patient who now haunts people near the hospital she died at.
Demented indeed. Not only does she desperately need a wig, but she's also a terrifying image. Imagine your bald, pale grandma walking toward you on all fours, crawling like some nightmare creature. That is so creepy. Alright, now let's watch the story of the Monsters in the Woods.
Monsters in the Woods. Me and my friends decided to go visit an old abandoned neighborhood in the woods. There were rumors of white monsters who attacked hikers and wild animals living in those parts of the woods. We didn't believe any of this and just wanted a little bit of an adventure. When we reached the place, it looked as if it hadn't been touched in years. The windows were broken and there were graffiti on the walls inside. There was even a pentagram drawn on the ground that caught me by surprise. Me and Jason found an old pathway leading into the woods, so we explored it a bit. That's when we heard shrieking coming from within the woods. We could barely make out what was in front of us due to the darkness when a figure jumped on the pathway. It was a tall white monster that we had heard about on the internet. It had bloodshot eyes and paper white pale skin with no hair on its whole body. Me and Jason ran as fast as we could, right as the white monster shrieked on the top of its lungs. We shouted at our friends to start the car, and they understood immediately as they watched who was following us. As we drove away, another white monster leaped onto the car, but Riley pumped on the gas pedal and drove away quickly. Even though we reached home safely, the memory of that night haunts us deeply.
First mistake. Going into the woods for an abandoned neighborhood. I'm pretty sure it's abandoned for a reason, but they went anyway, which was very stupid. And just imagining a pale, blood-eyed monster clinging onto the back of your car as you're driving sends chills all the way down my entire body. They truly got lucky to live and actually make it home. Let's move on to the late-night delivery.
I'll never forget this night. The pizza place I worked at was about to close, and I was getting ready to go home when the phone rang. I was working the counter alone that night, so I was taking calls. I picked up the phone. There was complete silence, so I hung up. About a minute later, the phone rings again, so I pick up again. Still silence. I was about to hang up again when I heard the very weak and cold voice of an old woman on the other end. She said she wanted a regular pie delivered. I remained polite on the phone, but on the inside I was screaming. I just wanted to get home and end my shift. I called out to my boss that somebody is requesting a delivery. He told me I had to go. I was upset at first, but I realized it's another tip, and the old ones usually tip the most, so I decided it was okay. I took down the address and told her I would be there soon, but she had already hung up. I thought that was rude, but I ignored it and yelled to the chef that I needed one regular. My boss told me to just go home after the delivery as the place would be closed. So a little before 10 o'clock, I got in my car and put the address into my GPS. The house was 7 miles away. The GPS took me to the quiet side of town. I arrived to the house. It was a small, one-floor house on a very quiet and empty block. I took the pizza and walked up to the door and rang the doorbell. There were no lights on in the house. I hoped that she hadn't given me the wrong address. I rang the doorbell again. There was still no answer. I was about to give up when I turned my head and saw somebody standing at the window. I got a little freaked out and backed up at first, but I eventually got closer to the window to see the person. It was an old woman, probably in her late 70s.
I would never be caught dead delivering anything or even leaving my own house at night. And that lady's skin is so icky and creepy. Let's keep watching.
She was just staring at me with a blank expression. I yelled to her through the glass that I had her pizza. She didn't react to what I said, so I screamed it louder. A big smile ran across her face. Not a pleasant, genuine smile. It was a smile that sent chills down my spine. I still remember that exact face she made through the window. I decided that I was freaked out enough and got back to my car and set the pizza in the passenger seat. I had to text my boss about this. I shot him a quick text and started my car, ready to get the hell away. I looked to my right to get one more look, to see the woman standing right outside my passenger side window, giving me the same stare she had given me before. I put my car in drive and floored it down the street, not looking back. My boss never made me do a late night delivery again.
Chills down your spine indeed. That woman's smile should literally be illegal. I'm glad he got out, and I'm glad the boss finally understands. Maybe don't go out during the witching hour just to deliver food. Okay, the next story is called The Man in the Red Hoodie.
This was last year, I think sometime in April. It was raining pretty much every day here, but this night was a lot heavier than usual, with scattered thunderstorms throughout the day. I was at work for most of the afternoon, but got back home around 8. As I was driving down my neighborhood road though, it was very clear that something had happened. All the lights were out in every single home. I pulled into my driveway and parked, and of course when I entered and tried to turn on the lights, it didn't work. The power was completely out, and my whole house was basically pitch black. I tossed my stuff by the doorway, then went down to the electrical box, just to see if for some reason that worked. But it didn't. This really sucked, because I didn't have hardly any spare lights aside from my phone. What I ended up doing was getting my laptop and setting it up on the coffee table in my living room. The white screen from the YouTube page that I had open lit up most of the room, so I sat back and just watched some videos. I had to work early the next day, but I didn't feel comfortable going to bed with the power out, so I was already planning on staying up late. I probably sat there for a good 2 hours, watching YouTube and checking my phone for any updates on the weather. The lightning was shaking the whole house, so it was pretty bad out there. But randomly in the night, a thump came from outside the window. I jumped a little, then turned my laptop screen to light up that side of the room. I got up and walked over, then twisted open the blinds. I froze up for a second, not expecting to see a man standing right on the other side of the window. His drenched hair was falling over his face, and he was peering through the window at me. He yelled something, but I honestly couldn't hear him with the heavy rain and thunder in the background. Being so caught off guard though, I didn't know what to do. I was a little freaked out though.
A little freaked out? I would have peed my pants at that point. That man is so creepy, he doesn't even look fully human.
So I just closed the blinds. I felt kind of horrible about it, but why was he outside banging on my window anyway? I heard him hit the window a few more times, then it went quiet. I figured he'd either given up or moved on to another house, so I turned my laptop toward me again and continued watching YouTube. The storm stayed strong through the whole night. I must have been up for another hour, but my eyes got really heavy and I just couldn't hold out any longer. I lay down on the couch and drifted off to sleep. I woke up to a loud crash. I didn't know if it was a nearby lightning strike or what, but I immediately got up from the couch. The power was still out, and the whole house was still pitch black. I turned my phone on and looked around, and that's when I heard something from the back of the house. My heart was pounding as I walked into the other room. When I shined my light down the house toward the back room, there were several large shards of glass on the ground reflecting the light back at me. I could then see the nearest window completely shattered, with rain pouring into the house and the blinds blowing frantically in the wind. And just a couple feet from there, I could see a shoulder sticking out from behind the wall. My whole body jerked when I saw them, and I instantly spun around and went for the front door. I ran through the rain, getting soaked all the way through, until I got to my neighbor's house. I stood under their overhang on the porch and called 911. It's no surprise that the man wasn't there when police showed up. Although not getting a full look at him inside my house, I was 100% sure it was the same guy from earlier, so I gave them that description. Oddly enough, or maybe not so much, there were 2 more reported break-in attempts that night, as well as several other reports of strange behavior outside people's homes. I was the only one unfortunate enough to have had them successfully break inside, but nobody knows what he was trying to do, and it seems like we won't ever know. Since then, he's never been sighted in or around our neighborhood.
That is terrifying. They never figured out the motive of the red hoodie man, but come on. I would have called the popo before running outside in the rain to a neighbor's house. Am I the crazy one? Because I would not be able to go back to sleep knowing there's a random creepy man staring through my window. The next story is called The Magician and the Demon Boy.
This incident happened about 10 years ago. Back then, I got robbed of money every day by bullies in my neighborhood. They always gathered around in the alley and took money from passerbys, but I had to run into them all the time because the alley was on the way to my house. Then one day, I couldn't take it anymore and said I couldn't give them money, and they beat me up. I came home crying, and I couldn't stand the outbursts of anger and pain. I finally made up my mind to take revenge. However, it wasn't like this from the beginning. All of this was just because of a flyer I ran into on the street. There was a sentence written on it: "We take revenge for you with black magic." I called them out of curiosity and asked what this is, and they said that they offer services of punishing someone who you want to punish on behalf of you. Eventually, I went there out of curiosity and with a bit of doubt. When I arrived and opened the door, there were many large skeleton models standing there, and suddenly, the skeletons turned their heads towards me and ran up to me, creaking. I fell on my back as I was startled, but when I regained consciousness, the skeletons were not moving, but remaining still. It was as if I saw an illusion for a moment, but it really felt like it was moving. The man sitting inside said, "What you see and what you don't see, both are true. What you just saw is real." I realized that he had a spell. I ran up to him and said, "There is someone I want to punish. How can I do that?" Then he handed me a menu, saying that he wouldn't take the blame no matter what happens. I said it's okay. The paper he handed me had numerous monsters to choose from. Starting with low-class demons, there were dozens of different types of monsters of the underworld drawn on it, including a 3-headed dog and a 5-headed snake monster. Also, the cost of summoning each monster varied as well. Lastly, there even was a death god. The cost of summoning the death god was incredibly high. I asked in a trembling voice, "Can you even summon the death god?" He said, "It is possible, but of course it is up to him whether or not the death god will take him to the afterlife."
The death god? What is he even talking about? I do feel bad for him being bullied, but you can be like the Karate Kid to get revenge. You don't need to make a deal with a creepy man in a hat talking about death gods. Huge red flags everywhere.
I pondered long and hard, and then he said, "If you couldn't decide, experience it yourself. I'll call them here, so take a look and decide." I chose a demon that looks like a gargoyle. Then he uttered an incantation, and after a while, the room suddenly became completely dark. Then I heard a deafening voice of a monster, and in front of my eyes stood a gigantic gargoyle-like demon. It grabbed my neck and lifted me into the air, laughing. I said, groaning in pain, "How?" Then the black magician said, smiling, "I told you, it's all real." After a while, the gargoyle disappeared like smoke, and I fell to the floor. I signed a contract with him right away, and he said he would summon the demon when I want to. A few days later, I saw the gangsters gathered around in the alley again, and I secretly hid behind them and called the Black Magician. He chanted a spell, and after a while, the alley became very dark. Then the bullies started screaming. Looking closely, the gargoyle had grabbed them by the neck and was throwing them frantically to the ground. As they tried to escape, crawling away in panic, they were trampled by the gargoyle, and their bodies were crushed. Screams and moans, begging for help, filled the alley. It was hard to believe what I was seeing. Moments later, people passing by called the police after hearing them scream, and when the police arrived, all of the bullies were sprawled out on the floor, gasping for breath. The police speculated that they had fought with each other. The bullies said that they were attacked by a monster, but the police didn't believe them. They were all taken by ambulance, and after that, I heard that all those bullies had broken bones and ruptured organs, so they underwent surgery. They were also receiving psychiatric treatment because they kept claiming that they saw monsters. They didn't show up in the alley anymore after that, and I didn't run into them anymore. I was really surprised that the black magic had been a success, and on the other hand, it was secretly delightful. But what's even more exciting is that no one knows I did that.
Alright, now he's just as bad as the creepy magician. We know he enjoys hurting people, and that's insane. But at least he got revenge. I hate bullies. And honestly, I would probably do the same thing. Okay, now let's watch the childhood horror story called It Came for the Boy.
When I was 8 years old, I used to live in my grandma's house in Ecuador. Many of the neighbors would talk to my parents about seeing weird stuff in the house, like shadows moving around the windows when we weren't home. The first thing that would come to our heads was that someone must have broken into the house, but nothing would ever be missing. Of course, they didn't think that there was someone breaking in. They were sure that our house was haunted. Everyone even refused to come inside for parties or any other special occasion. They told us to get a priest and to get rid of any bad spirits. We didn't take their warnings as something important because my parents don't believe in those kinds of things. Although I would hear someone going up the stairs at night, our stairs were really old, so they would make a loud sound when someone would step on them. However, when I checked, there was nothing. I would just run to my bed and cover my head with the sheets until I fell asleep. One night, someone started knocking on the door really hard and screaming. We got really scared as it was 12:30 a.m. and everyone was asleep by then in our neighborhood. It was extremely rare that someone would be up at that time. My dad took his shotgun and told my mom and me to stay in my room and not move. I was scared for my dad's safety, but I felt relieved when my dad said my neighbor's name. He informed us that a water pipe had broke in our backyard and the water was spraying his house and broke one of his windows. He was nice about the situation and even said he'd help us fix the pipe. My dad got the shovels, as the pipes were underground, and we had to dig to see what was wrong and how we could fix it. As we started digging, they realized that they needed other materials, and they went to get it, leaving me alone in the backyard.
Yeah, leaving an 8-year-old outside at night when you know something strange is happening is definitely an interesting decision. But let's see what happens next.
There was barely any light back there. The only source of light we had was the moon, and one light post a block away from my house. I was pissed off. I mean, how could they leave an 8-year-old boy there by himself in the dark? But I didn't say anything about it. About 10 minutes had gone by since they left, and I was wondering what was taking them so long. They were only getting some materials after all. But as I was going to go back inside, I saw something moving really fast at the corner of my eye. I froze. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. All I could do was move my eyes. I started to freak out, looking around to see what the hell was running around me. I didn't see anything. It was as if there was nothing there at all. But then I looked to my right, and I saw something that haunts me to this very day. It was a demon, in my opinion. It was so tall, around 7 or 8 feet tall. It had long, skinny legs with a really buff body. It also had very long spiral horns, and his eyes shined in the dark. I still couldn't move. The thing ran by me, looked at me, but it didn't do anything to me. It just looked at me. It could have been a goat or a sheep. I've never seen one so big or one that walks on two legs like a human. It ran, and I hid behind a big tree by my neighbor's house. Finally, I could move. I yelled at the top of my lungs while crying hysterically. My dad came running with his shotgun in hand and asked me what was wrong. I explained what I saw to him, but he didn't believe me, nor did my mom. But someone did. My neighbor told me that he thought nothing happened to me because I'm a kid. As time passed, I slowly got over it. I moved from that house and moved to New York. My grandparents sold the house, and I left that experience in the past. However, that's not where this story ends. In my sophomore year in high school, I had a nightmare. The thing that I saw that night was in it this time. I could only see its head as it was hiding behind the big tree. He said 3 words that'll haunt me until my time comes. It said, "You can't hide." I woke up from my nightmare and headed to school. While in school, at around 12:30 p.m., there was an announcement. A classmate of mine had been killed in front of my school by a car without brakes. I turned pale as I thought my nightmare may have something to do with the incident. I was scared and even went home early. I told my parents about it, but this time they took me to a priest and he said he'd give me something in 3 days. Every single day I had the same nightmare until my priest gave me a blessed cross, and I haven't had any nightmares about the thing anymore. However, every night I sleep with the covers over my head. Call me a coward or anything you want, but the thing still hasn't left my mind. Those 3 words haunt me till this day, making me wonder when I will forget or move on from the thing.
No, I don't think the boy is a coward at all. That thing is basically like a skinwalker, and it's terrifying. He's honestly handling it way better than I would have, so huge props to him. Well, thanks for joining me for these creepy animated stories based on real incidents. Peonies, let me know which one was your favorite, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon, and always stay safe.